We're back on OpenLine, and we are glad that you're joining us here. We are talking with our expert, Ask an Attorney. We're talking with attorney Clint Kelly from the Kelly firm here in the Nashville area. And we have found, as we've talked to many of you this evening, medical malpractice and some of those questions that come with it. Do you have a case? Is it something that you, can bring a case with? This is what you need to do. Either call tonight with your question, with your comments for Clint, or we're also going to give you the number where you can call and find out, because if you have a case, finding out is absolutely free. And that's the thing that we want to stress, right. and it's amazing. We say that often, but people think, oh no, I've got to pay a retainer fee, but they don't. And what people do so often is they just don't call, but they think I don't have money for a retainer fee.
Right, and that's not necessary. I mean, take advantage of what you have in essence as a privilege to call a lawyer and have a lawyer evaluate your claim and have it done for free and get your day in court, and you don't owe anything unless you recover money. That's what's great about our system.
Well, and we were talking about just before the break, with the talk of repealing the Affordable Care Act, what will happen if there's not a plan in place and that kind of thing, and this could happen, but how could this affect people moving forward as they go to the doctor and they go to the hospital?
I'm not going to take a position on Obamacare because that involves a whole lot of different factors or issues. I do know the premiums are going up in a ridiculous amount, and I can understand why there need to be changes, but what they don't or should not do is change our malpractice system, because to use repealing Obamacare as an excuse to take people's rights away from them in court is just plumb wrong. And that's what I'm afraid they're going to try to do, is they're going to try to do at the federal level what they've done here in Tennessee, which is put a cap on people's damages, let the government take over how these claims will be resolved, or try to set up health courts. You know, that was in the newspaper. Basically set up a bureaucracy to handle these claims. There's no excuse for that. It's not fair. It's not right. It isn't going to save people money. We've had tort reform. We've had medical malpractice, liability reform in Tennessee for almost 6 years. And Chuck, do you see your health care premiums going down?
Not at all. Not at all.
So, I mean, it's really an excuse to try to take people's rights away, and we have enough of that going on already. So if for people who watch this show, anytime there's going to be some replacement to Obamacare, and I expect that to happen, call Senator Alexander or call Senator Corker and say, do not change the malpractice rules. I want my day in court.
Because you need that, because if something happens, and as people have been calling in this evening, when something happens to you or to a friend or to a family member and you don't feel like you have the rights and you are losing out on those rights, you aren't able to get what is due to you.
Just in the course of a night, look at Sabrina, Teresa, Larry. Think of all these people have just called already, may have cases, but could have their rights taken away from them simply because people say, well, it'll save you a few bucks on your premium. That's just not true.
And, and I think, or this is basically, I'm going to ask you this as a question, but is there a case that's too small or too large?
Well, no case is too large, and in my judgment, no case is really too small if the liability is correct. But if the Congress tries to take people's rights away, calling it malpractice liability reform, the people who are going to suffer are the people who have what I call mid-level claims. They won't be brought because the government will make it too hard to bring the cases. That's why I urge you, particularly these days when you can email your senator or email your congressman, just say, look, you want to replace Obamacare, that's fine if you're in support of it. Do not change medical malpractice. Do not take away my day in court.
And it's very important, because if you're day in court and you're not able to get what's due.
Maybe all you have to keep you from being poor.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about, because you guys have handled so many cases, so what are some of the more common cases that you've handled?
I'm seeing, Chuck, a lot more blood clot cases. Probably about the third or fourth show I've discussed this, but the reason why is blood clots are one of the most preventable causes of death or injury in hospitals these days. I mean, they give you a drug, typically it's heparin, and that'll keep you from clotting and being injured. Some hospitals are not following through with Surgeon General protocols and policies for blood clot prevention, and people die from it. It's called a DVT, or deep vein thrombosis, that can lodge in your lungs and cut off the circulation of your heart and kill you. And I've got 2 blood clot cases already within the last 6 months. So that is a very common case I'm seeing, is the failure of the hospital to protect patients from blood clots. I get a lot of infection cases, people who've picked up MRSA or some other type of infection, either during surgery or simply being in the hospital for a long period of time. Botched surgery cases, I see a lot of those, whether it's breast surgery like the one we saw earlier, or a gallbladder procedure that's gone wrong. And then I see cases of bleeding where patients have had post-operative bleeding. It's gotten out of control and it causes some bad outcome, like maybe paralysis or some other terrible outcome. And so those are the typical cases that I'm seeing where there are complications and they're not managed properly, and then a campfire turns into a forest fire and you have really bad injuries or death.
Okay, we're going to go back to our lines right now. Jenny is on the line with us. Jenny, good evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Clint?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I had a hysterectomy through laparoscopic surgery back in 2013 because I had fibroids in my uterus and stuff. And I'm a 47-year-old woman, but when I went back to see my doctor, for my post-op appointment, I told him I had green stuff coming out of my stomach, and it stunk really bad out of my belly button. So he did a culture of it and sent it off, and he prescribed me Levaquin for 30 days. And then he gave me an appointment to come back and see him, and I went back and saw him, and it was still doing it. It still had the infection. And he prescribed me another 30 days of Levaquin and told me to come back in a month. And this went on for a few months. And then I just kept getting just sicker and sicker, So I ended up at the hospital, another hospital, and they got an infectious disease doctor on the case, and they decided it was Pseudomonas. And it had colonized. I had a hernia mesh inside of me, and it had colonized on the hernia mesh. So I was told that until I got the hernia mesh removed, I'd never get rid of the infection. So I'm diabetic, and my blood sugars were running like 400 to 600 all the time because of this infection. And anyway, my doctor originally, when he did the culture and sent it off, shouldn't he have known that Levaquin wasn't going to do nothing for me? I mean, it gave me neuropathy really bad in my feet, but it didn't help the infection. And I ended up having to have surgery, and it was a major surgery. When they did it, they had to leave me open and just, staple the outside of my stomach together, but all the insides had to be left open so it could heal from the inside out. And then they said they would have to go back after 6 months and put new hernia mesh in there after the infection cleared up. But since then, I've had 2 heart attacks. And, it took so long. I had that infection for like 2 years.
Okay, Jenny, I know it's been very rough, so let's give Clint an opportunity to speak to you on that.
A Pseudomonas infection is one of the worst that you can have. It can be devastating. The question of whether or not the doctor should have prescribed Levaquin, Jenny, I don't know, because I don't know enough about the facts of the case. You said this happened in 2013, and so obviously the statutes run on this particular case, so I don't think you'd have a claim because your case would be time barred, but that would be a situation where an infection that may have started out as a campfire turned into a forest fire because it was not managed properly.
Okay, so that is good to know. So, Jenny, so sorry for your problems, but we do appreciate you calling in and sharing your story with us. We are talking, we've just got a couple of minutes left. We want to kind of wrap up and let you know, too, we're talking about medical malpractice. And I know a lot of times you're watching and you're wondering, maybe something happened to a friend or a family member. You're wondering, is there a case? And Clint, I just want to say for people just tuning in, what do you say when people have these questions?
Call me. Simply call me. If you suspect that there's been some type of medical mistake, just pick up the phone and call. It's free. You pay nothing unless I recover money for you. And we have this great court system. Use it, because it may be the difference between you getting compensated and getting nothing.
And what's an example of someone that almost didn't call you and then they were so glad that they did?
Well, it's a case where I think we talked off air about a couple, and one spouse, the injured spouse, wanted to get a lawyer and wanted to bring a claim, and his wife was adamantly opposed to it. And he kept putting it off till eventually, he wasn't earning anything. He totally lost his earning capacity, and so he called and came to see me. Towards the end of the statute, I believe it was in the 10th or 11th month, wife didn't like it. She didn't agree with it, and she had to deal with her all the way through the case because of just kind of how she was raised. But we did get a successful recovery. He did get money, and he was happy for that.
Well, that's good. It's almost like when someone says, "I'm not going to go see a psychiatrist because it looks like I'm weak if I go." I mean, that was the
That is
the view.
a great analogy, Chuck. I never really thought of it that way. That's exactly a good way to describe it. Is they put it off till they really need it, and then when they go get it, they're like, "Gee, I wish I'd done this earlier."
Right. Absolutely. All right. We are going to take a short break. We'll be right back. We'll give you the information on how you can contact the Kelly firm if you do think you have a quick case or you just need to know. So take a break. We'll be right back.